this story that we are going to tell you is about a shaman. Lapal was her name. And this was something that she discovered in her transformation from, what can we say, ordinary human to shaman. Can we say it like that? And it's possible that many shamans before her had this experience, but for her it was such a part of the transformation from one state of being to another, and she saw the possibilities within that for everybody, not just for shamanic transformations, but for the general people, but for other kinds of transformations. And so she was compelled, it had such an impact on her, she was compelled to tell this story and then make it part of shamanic practice. So Lapal, like many shamans, when they go from their ordinary life to their transformation to a shaman, became very ill. And the illness for her was what you would now call fever. She was like fire herself. She was to touch from the outside, people looking at her, they couldn't touch her. They burnt their hands. It was so intense. It is said it was so intense, her skin temperature, that they blistered. The other people blistered when they touched it. She did not blister, but they blistered when they touched her. So they could not help her. They could not keep her cool. They could not assist her in any way. She had to go through this moment herself. But in this space, Lapal was in her spirit world conscious, even though her physical world she was not conscious. So in her spirit world she was conscious. And she realized that she was on fire. And she stood back to look at what was happening. And she saw that the fire was in her blood. And in her blood it was bubbling. It was so hot. It was bubbling. The fire was in there. And as it was coursing through her body, she could feel that it was cleansing every part of her body. It was ridding her body of any diseases, any what you call toxins, anything that was not meant to be in the body, that inhibited the body from running, from its equilibrium, from running properly. The fire was burning it off. So she could see this in the veins, the fire in the blood and the veins. It was going around, it was going through the heart, it was through the lungs, the brain, all of the organs, the stomach, the intestine, every part of her body was being cleansed by the fire in her blood. And then she saw that the fire died down. As the work had been completed, the fire died down. She was still very hot, however. From the end of the fire came the smoke. And this interested her greatly because she could see that her whole body was filled with smoke. A gray-white smoke. And even in her physical state, she could smell the smoke in her nostrils. And she knew that she could smell the smoke in her nostrils. And she could feel it in her lungs, the smoke. It was making breathing a bit difficult. And she wondered why, in her spirit world, why it would be there was this smoke. And then she started to see something rather miraculous. She started to see that the smoke, the wisps of smoke, some of them started to make forms. And they were forms of people, perhaps, individuals. You could call them that. But also there were animal forms. And she realized that these forms were spirits that were within her. And some of these forms were clutching on, and they were fighting and screaming. They didn't want to leave, and they were clawing. They were making a very big deal about going. And she realized that the smoke was actually smoking the spirits that were not beneficial for her. The smoke was literally smoking them out. so that she was cleansed physically by the fire in her blood, but now she was going to be purified spiritually inside her. And then these spirits were smoked out and then they disappeared. And she could see that her body, in her spirit self, she could see that her body had calmed down completely. She was no longer burning. She was no longer finding it hard to breathe. But she was still unconscious. But she was conscious in her spirit world. And now she realized that she had to go on her spirit walk to find out her path. So she turns away from the body. As she turns away from the body, she is completely engulfed in smoke from a fire that is yonder, completely engulfed in it. And she can't see anything. She can't, it's like it's dense. She can't even, if she can put her hand through it, it is so, but she can feel it when she puts her hand through it. It is so dense around her. And the smoke, it swirls around the body. Swirling around the body, and the smell, it's in the eyes, it's in the nostrils, and she is at the point of collapsing because she thinks this is going to kill me. This smoke is going to kill me outside my being. And then it comes to her that she must blow. She must blow through that smoke. She must get everything that's inside her, that's within her, all of that strength, all of that cleansed and pure being that's in her, and blow through this. And so she gathers up everything that's inside her, and she takes in and she breathes out the biggest breaths that she can, and she clears a space in front of her. As that space is completely clear in front of her, it is like a miracle. All of the smoke, it disappears. The smoke is gone, and she can see. She can see the fire in front of her. And she makes her way to that fire. And she goes to the fire, and she stands in front of the fire, and she looks very intently at the fire. She looks around the fire. She walks around it. And she sees that the flames, as they come up, it's like they're giving her a message. One flame, and it's like each one is trying to attract her attention. And she becomes so entranced with this, so besotted by what is going on, that she falls into the fire. But interestingly, she does not burn up. She does not disintegrate. She does not end her life when she falls into this fire. But she goes into that fire. And there the flames, they are licking her. And as they lick her, they give her, it's like they are giving her information, giving her knowledge, giving her vision. And so she understands that the fire itself, with each individual flame that pops up, that moves around, that tries to get your attention, is actually a little bit of knowledge, something that's coming up to you and only to you. Because a fire will never seem the same to any two people. It will always seem different. You will be fixated on one flame, but somebody else will be fixated on another. So every fire, every flame, every wisp of smoke, it's going to be for an individual person completely different to the one that's next to them. And what she realizes when she is in this fire is that this fire can give her vision. By being as one with the fire, completely focused on the fire, in the fire, a part of the fire itself gives her vision. When this realization occurred to her, the fire disappeared. There was no fire, there was no smoke. There was just her in her spirit world, and there she was as well in the physical world. And she realized that this is what her journey was about, that she was to bring this idea of fire into their lives, into her life, as if you like a tool or a part of her life, and bring it into the lives of others in this shamanic tradition, and to make it part of shamanic practice. So she enters back into her body, and after some time she comes back and she awakens, and she can give this information to people. So you can see that from that story, for us, in my group, that is how, for us, we visualize fire, the sacred fire. So yes, we acknowledge that fire itself is sacred, but when we use it in the way that we do in the shamanic world, in the shamanic tradition, then it becomes the sacred fire. So there is a slight difference in terminology there. So what we're going to talk about, that story, it gave us several things. One was the idea of transformation from one state of being to another state of being. It also gave the idea of cleansing, purifying, clearing, and vision. So these are the 5 areas that we are going to talk about.